All right. I've been a Drake fan for a long time. Before anyone freaks out in the comments, I just want everyone to know I'm basically a stan. Even the stuff that no one listens to. It's like Views is one of my favorite albums. More Life is a great mixtape. But I have a hard time believing that we waited a year to listen to CBL. What was Drake doing for the last 8 months? How long does it take to shave a heart into your hair every morning? I don't understand. He's been teasing this album for 2 years, officially announcing it last October, and it was supposed to come out in January this year, but it just never did. And there was more or less no word from Drake all year until he and Kanye started dating, fake beefing immediately before the release of Donda, at which point Drake announced he was gonna drop his album just 4 days after Kanye. Okay, let's just talk about the record. This is the good, the bad, and the weird of Certified Boy Lover. First impressions. Upon my very first listen to this record, I honestly hated it. I thought it was lazy, one-dimensional, boring, soft, weak, long, drawn out. Even Travis's feature was like mumbled, weak, it dragged on way too long. The one and only moment of CLB that I really enjoyed upon first listen was the Beatles sample in the intro track, and even that went on for way too long. This album is 90 minutes in length. It has 21 tracks, and a ton of the songs are just 4, 5, 6 minutes long. In what world is that normal or acceptable in 2021? Who wants to listen to passage after passage of Drake just whining into a microphone for 5 minutes straight? Anyway, after my pretty bad first impression, I listened to this record a few more times, and I was able to figure out what I enjoyed and what I really didn't like, so let's get into it. The good. Here's the thing about the good. The high points on CBL are kind of few and far between. They're hushed and subdued, and as far as albums go, this one just doesn't really make a statement. Drake never really makes statements musically, lyrically. He's more or less a chameleon. We've been over this. Everyone knows Drake rides waves and hasn't changed the style of his records in years. Basically, I feel like he's been relying on the same style since 2016 when he dropped Fuse. That being said, my first few impressions were just needlessly harsh. The album is definitely a bit of a grower. The songs are long, there are way too many of them, and honestly, it's not a fresh sound at all. But none of that really means the album has to be bad. So here's what I like about CLB. Fair Trade is a pretty good song. Travis's feature is somehow boring yet satisfying at the same time, but this is probably Drake's best performance on the album. Obviously, the Instagram caption bars go hard, and the one about his mom is pretty nice too. Even though it's about 2 minutes too long, I really enjoyed this song. TSU is a pretty good song too, as long as you can ignore the absolutely unnecessary 1-minute intro and the fact that it's literally a song about Drake simping over a stripper. In Too Deep is a pretty boring song until the beat switch halfway through that turns it into a darker, colder banger with a future verse. Pipe Down is a pretty good song, no complaints there. Knife Talk with 21 and Project Pat is a great song. Obviously, Lil Wayne and Rick Ross do a pretty good job on their features, but at this point, I'm honestly out of nice things to say. It's not a bad sounding album. Obviously, Drake just didn't forget how to sing or anything like that. It's just, I feel like I've heard everything on this record before, at least once or twice. Everything about the songs, melodies, beats, lyrics, features, nothing about this album is at all substantially different from Dark Lane demo tapes, Scorpion, More Life, or even Views. Honestly, it's way more boring than those projects. The songs are long, they're way too long, and there are a lot of them. I would say that this would have been a better album if Drake had cut some songs, but honestly, there aren't really any songs that are noticeably better enough that I feel like they deserve to stay and others don't. I think Drake's songwriting is probably CBL's weakest link. The majority of songs on this record are either about Drake's meaningless, superficial connections with unnamed women that he seemingly only engages in because he's bored, or it's just more vague, unclear stories about his place at the top of the music industry. And he kind of approaches both of those topics with the emotional maturity of a 14-year-old boy. He's just constantly talking about trust and fake friends and all this, and it just comes off so petty and ridiculous. There are also just a ton of really terrible, corny, goofy bars, like the chorus on the Cash Grab TikTok song Way Too Sexy, or the repeated Daddy's Home on the album's second track, and the lesbian line. It's astonishingly low effort. It's way worse than anything Drake has ever put out, and he's not known for being a good songwriter in the first place. But the thing is, even on the songs without the cringy bars, they're just forgettable. Get Along Better, I Miss You Too with Kid Cudi, Fucking Fans, The Remorse, basically the last half of this album, there's just nothing memorable. It's peak Drake, but it's so distinctively Drake that there's nothing setting these songs apart from each other. I genuinely can't imagine ever listening to anything off this album again besides Fair Trade, TSU, In Too Deep, Pipe Down, Yebba's Heartbreak, and Knife Talk. Out of 21 tracks, those 6 are the only ones that I would listen to again, and that's not a good ratio. The features on this album kind of suck too. Baby's verse is lame, Dirk and even Givon somehow didn't stand out at all on In the Bible, Jay-Z's verse is lazy, boring, Kid Cudi somehow sounded bored by his verse, somehow it just doesn't seem like anyone's spirit was really in it. And Drake himself doesn't sound like his spirit is really in it. He just has no energy. He's singing about the same thing over and over to the point where he sounds like he's done with it. I mean, it's not even an interesting subject. Ooh, I'm Drake. I don't love women, but I sure do love having sex. Okay, we get it. Jesus Christ. At the end of the day, I hope no one is surprised by CBL not being a very good record. Drake hasn't been making good albums for a while. At this point, his mixtapes and Lucy's are usually better than his records. I would honestly rather listen to Dark Lane demo tapes over this. Same goes for More Life over Views. In general, though, Drake just doesn't really have any reason to need to make a good album. It's not like his career needs it. It's not like his sales rest on the music being good. He clearly can write good music. I mean, he has done it before. I said at the beginning of this video, I'm basically a Drake stan. I mean, I think Drake's best music is really fucking good. But at this point, he just puts out whatever. No risk, just the safest, most algorithmic, casual music he can possibly come up with. Albums with 20 songs, maybe 5 of them are good. But that's just how it is. One of my other big complaints about this album is how overmarketed it was for what it is. I mean, Drake announced this album 2 years ago. He talked about the title and the release date a year ago. People have been going nuts for this record, especially since it came out literally 9 months late because Drake sprained his ankle. But it's just not worth that hype. Nothing on this record sounds like it took years to produce in any way, shape, or form. Honestly, it's probably his flattest album, and that's saying something for sure. In all, it's just so easy to tell Drake doesn't really care about the quality of his music. Lazy writing, lazy vocals, lazy features, and lazy beats. There's just no new sounds, no new ideas, a complete lack of creativity or attention to detail. I honestly feel confused as to how this album was hyped up for an entire year and ended up being a collection of 6 or 7 passable songs and 14 filler tracks. There's no replay value. I can't even remember what the songs sound like minutes after listening to them, let alone a month or two from now. At best, CBL is decent background music. When I first listened to this in the car at 2 a.m., I was paying attention. That's why it sounded like shit. Later on, I'm doing something else like working, listening to it in the grocery store. I didn't mind it that much, but if you're actually paying attention, this record falls apart. And I really don't think you could consider something a quality album if it works best when you're not paying attention. I know CBL is going to sell insane numbers. Drake will continue his reign as the biggest rapper alive, but I just don't feel anything for this. Listening to a guy with access to the best production, writing, and resources in the entire industry make the same 5 songs about being a 35-year-old fuckboy getting his heart broken for the millionth time, it just feels like none of these songs are even about anything. The lyrics are so nondescript and vague. There's just no story arc. It repeats the same shallow themes over and over. Same with the instrumentals. There's just no concept tying this together besides Drake being both vaguely emotional and dead inside at the same time. And yeah, there's going to be a built-in audience streaming this for a long time, but damn, if there isn't so much music out there that's way more interesting than this. For me, CBL is a light 5 out of 10. It's just enough to not be terrible, but not nearly enough to be good. One long song with 21 different titles. This has been Volksgeist. Thank you for watching.